So today's project is Simplicity 9758. This is a Norris Donta Ford pattern. I have it in both sizes because I accidentally bought the wrong size when I was with my husband. Had to run back to Hobby Lobby and buy it this week in the correct size and had quite a sticker shock. The price was $22 for that pattern at Hobby Lobby. So I'm gonna make at least two out of it. I gotta get my money's worth because I seldom pay full price for patterns. My husband picked this up himself. He did this all on his own and brought it home to me, pre-treated. They are a poly cotton 45-inch wide fabric from Walmart. I never sew with Walmart fabric. So he was there, he saw this, he loved it. It is a bandana pattern. I have it in two colors. These have been machine washed and dried, and it comes in panels. I'm pretty sure this was a Waverly. It's 2 yards long per panel, 45 wide, and I think it was only $3, so very inexpensive. I'm going to hopefully be able to layer and cut this. So I'm going to lay out one turquoise and one red. That's my hope, so I can get one cutting but two garments. The thing he really wants in this, we're doing the short sleeve version. It does have the little loop in the back. He wants his shirt to fasten with two different possibilities. So he likes the Velcro fastening for like around the pool, easy on and off, comfy to wear, no big deal. So we have some sew-in Velcro that we're going to put down. I'm going to put it not as one long strip, but as in pieces. But he also rides a motorcycle, and sometimes he would like to be able to wear this shirt potentially on the motorcycle, and the Velcro's not strong enough. It might pull open on the motorcycle. So he would like where the buttons are to have snap closure. Now he doesn't want the snap closure when he's swimming because they're a little too stiff and it's a little more difficult to get in and out of. So we're going to be putting the snap closure where the buttons are, and then between the snaps we're going to have Velcro. So this is going to be a double fastener project. I bought more Shape Flex interfacing. I just love this interfacing. I had never, as far as I know, used Shape Flex before, and when I made the Cavalcade Traveler bag, it called for Shape Flex, and it has become one of my favorite interfacing. Hobby Lobby does carry it if it's the only fabric store in your area, like it is for me, and it was, I want to say $5.99 a yard. You can get it on Amazon. It's wider, but it's like $16 for a package, and I think it's only 1 yard in that package. So it was quite a bit cheaper at Hobby Lobby, even though the pattern was not. So that's what we're going to work on. Let me show you my outfit real quick because I have videos for everything I'm wearing, and it's kind of cute. I'm going out for my anniversary today. If you would like to make this outfit, this is the Bondi tee. I cannot remember the pattern number for this skirt, but isn't it cute? I also have a pattern on making these cute little belts. This particular one has a vintage buckle on it that you'd have to find just by searching eBay and Etsy and things like that. But look at this skirt. If you want to make this outfit, all of the things will be linked down in the description. Now let's work on today's project. I'll talk to you again about directional fabric. If the design on your fabric is directional. Mine technically is, but it's just not noticeable in a paisley like this, in a bandana fabric. All the paisleys do face one direction. I'm not worried if some of them are upside down. But if this were a rose design, or it had an animal or something where it's very obviously you're going to have an upside down mermaid, this is where normally you fold the fabric. Here's our selvage. This way, for 45 wide, our piece is on because they're too wide to have it folded the other direction. However, one of them will be upside down. So you'd have one upside down sleeve, etc. The way that you remedy that is you actually see how much length you need, you cut it, and then you flip it so that you have wrong sides together, but they're both facing the correct direction. So here's my little paisley direction. I would take my piece that I cut off, this is this remnant from the other one, and I would put them wrong sides together or right sides together. But the main thing is you want to make sure that your design is both facing the right direction, and then when you lay your pattern down, you make sure that you have it so that you don't end up with upside down mermaids. Here's the bottom of the paisley, so those are in the right direction. I have my wrong sides together. And now when I lay down my sleeve, you can see that I will end up with two sleeves, a right and a left, with the direction of the design going the proper way, because here's the top of the sleeve, here's the top of my design. If this were something really noticeable, like a little animal or something, then I will end up with upside down animals. Just throwing that out as a precaution for anyone who's working on this. Now for the yoke, we only need one, but I am going to cut two. If you end up with one upside down, you put it on the inside, it won't matter. All right. I measured to make sure, so you can see here's my selvage edges, and I'm folding this way. And now I'm going to fold the second one the same. And the main thing you have to worry about when you're going like this is that you have all your layers. You don't end up cutting like one of them's too low on the bottom where you can't see it and you end up missing part of your sleeve cap or something. Now none of these are on the folds, so my folds don't have to be perfect as long as the grain lines are straight. And you don't want any wrinkles on the underneath. Now if you're only cutting one, you don't have to worry about any of this. And here are my pattern pieces. So I've got a sleeve and a yoke. And I actually have my turquoise just a little bit smaller. So I've started laying out. I have my two pieces and I made sure they're exactly lined up right on that edge. Here's the cat has an opinion. Here's my opinion on it. It just didn't work because I was using it one-handed. With the second hand, I can kind of hold it down straight and I can really be happy with that. All right, I'm going to show you how I mark for the pocket. Now we only need the pocket on the left side. I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to go straight down in my size. Now currently what's showing is the right side. I'm going to open this up because the pin goes all the way through. Here it is. So when I open this, this is the right side that I'm looking at. This one is the left side on my red one. So I can see my little pin right there and I'm just going to put a little mark. And then on the turquoise, it's the very bottom one. I'm going to do the same thing, put a mark. It's showing up pretty good. And once I get that one marked, I'm going to pull this pin out and I'm going to go to the next one. Both of those marked. Let me show you how I mark. My notches, mainly for sleeve, for putting in the sleeve. There's my notch. And you can cut the notch out if you want to, but what I prefer to do is to come in with my scissors. And this is the front, so it has a single notch. And I cut just straight through the middle. I'm going to get all layers because I can feel I didn't. Now I'm going to do that anywhere that the notch really matters. So I'm going to do that in the arm side. I'm going to do that on the collar. The collar also needs its markings because we will use it to line up. Make sure you get the correct size. I'm doing a 46. I'm going to just barely make the little cut. And then we also have circles. So I'm going to come back and do the same thing on the circles. I'm going to poke down with the pin on the correct size. And I'm on all of these. You can mark it right side or wrong side. You see the wrong side for this. Now, when we're doing the pocket, you see the right side. So I'm going to now open this up to the wrong side of the fabric, and I'm going to mark it. You can use whatever color is going to show up. Yellow's not showing up great, I'm sure, on the camera, but it's good in person. I'm going to do that for the red and the turquoise. And I'm marking right where the pin comes out of the fabric. And I'm going to come over and do the same thing on this one. And I'm going to do that anywhere that I think it's super important. Collar is really important, sleeve is really important, arm side is really important. Okay. I have 2 Teflon sheets down, kind of overlapping so that I don't have to worry about if there's any little hangover, it won't stick to either the iron or the ironing board. And then I have my interfacing with the glue side against it. So now I'm ready to press on my interfacing for this. I'm now ready to fuse, and you're probably sick of me telling you guys to do this, but we don't iron, we press. So I'm going to hold straight down. This is pressing, where you just hold it down and kind of count. This is ironing, and you do not want to be doing that when interfacing, when doing a glue and interfacing, because it will wiggle around that glue. It will make it not stick as well. It can cause other issues. So I'm going to do the interfacing trick. So if you've not seen that video where you make this, you don't have to worry about seam finishing the inner edge. I sew that first together, flip it around, and then interface. If you want to see how to do that, that will be linked below. It's not very time consuming, and it makes it look so nice and finished on the inside. All right, we are going to now finish our interfacing here. Now remember, if you iron on this side, you will stick it down, so we're not going to do that. It's been stitched. I have my little corner up here I'm going to turn. You can trim it out if you want to. Flip it over. Watch the video if you want to see step by step all the details for this, but we're just going to press all of these facings together. Okay, I'll meet you back here for pocket and then collar. So I've pressed down 1/4 inch on the edge of the pocket, and now I'm folding down. It has a fold line on the pattern piece, and there it is. So I've just marked that on both of my pockets, and I'm just going to fold down, and I'm going to stitch just this top part. I believe it's a 5/8 inch, so I'm going to stitch 5/8 just here and here, flip it around, and top stitch the top of the pocket. That makes the pocket automatically fold to the back, and then I can come in and serge around this after I do this one little stitching thing to make the pocket not fray at all. Pockets don't fray too badly because of the way that they're sort of enclosed, but if you actually use them and pull things in and out, they could start to fray. Okay, we're going to take this over and serge around this outer edge. Don't worry about this up here, it's going to be self-enclosed. I'm going to flip this around. So once it's flipped around, you can see this automatically starts to pull in the seam allowance. So I'm going to make sure these edges are pulled out all the way. You can see my little seam allowance. So I'm just going to flip it over. I can feel, if you can't, if you have a hard time telling where that line is, you can mark it on the front. I'm going to just start about 1/8 inch from the edge. Here is the edge of my fabric. I want to get close to that edge, but I don't want to fall off of that edge. This is my 1 inch line here, so you can also set it at the 1 inch line. That should catch everything and keep it self-enclosed. All right, we now have one pocket ready to be sewn onto our shirt. I'm going to go ahead and make the red one. We have made our little pocket, and this is showing us applying the pocket. So we're getting ready to do this, but before we do, I'm going to go ahead and work on the collar, which is, this is like step 1, 2, 3. We're going to go all the way up here to step 9, and we applied our interfacing to one piece, and the other piece is not interfaced. This terminology, to me, is a confusing way to do it. So what they are saying is you're applying your interfacing to one of the collar pieces, and now that is the collar facing. A lot of times it's just called the under collar. So to me, this terminology things, I think I'm just used to it being a certain way. But we're going to now do that, and the way it's shown, it looks like you're stitching it closed except for this area, but you're not. We're actually only going to stitch 3 sides. This stitching is here only on the facing side, or the one with the interfacing, for opening the notch. So I'm going to sew my collar, now that I have them together and I have my little markings on here. I'm going to sew the 3 sides. So this side across the top, and down. We're leaving this entire thing here open. That's as far as I'm going to go in the collar, turn it and press it. I guess I could go ahead and do this thing too. I might go ahead and clip and turn up. Okay, so now that this is pressed up and stitched here, I don't know how vital this is, honestly. It's kind of important to have some stitching like right in this area. I tend to stitch right across here instead of stopping at that spot. I'm just following the directions, but as a rule, I do it differently. We're going to now line these on top of each other, and we're going to stitch the 3 sides, leaving this edge open. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm just going to put a couple clips so that it stays in place. Okay, so now this collar is completed. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and trim these corners, flip it around and press it so that we have a completed collar. So when we get to this step later, we'll be ready to go. I trim off these corners right here, these top corners. I'm not going to worry about these for now. I'm going to trim off these top corners. And then when I turn it, it'll be less bulky in this outer corner of the collar. Okay, so you can see I've got them separated. I'm going to come in and trim just the top one, which is why I'm using these scissors. You can use them, I've got them upside down actually. And that really helps it slide along depending on what you're cutting. All right, here's my nice collar. I've got it trimmed out. I'm going to now come in and I'm putting my thumb up in this corner as close as I can to help it turn. And you can even kind of fold those edges, which is why we trim out some of that. So we want a nice sharp corner. Now, if your corners are not coming out good, I have this tool that I really like. And you can see it's got a ball point. See the ball point? And it's nice for poking out corners. When I'm ready to press it, I want to press it with the upper collar on top. So I'm going to fold this over, and the goal is, the one that's interfaced is the under collar. I think it makes it more clear. Let me tip it down. This is the upper collar, just barely coming over. Can you see that? So we've got 2 collars made. This is the upper. This is the under. We're ready to go on to pocket. So now we're going to go back to the beginning and apply our pockets. Okay, we are pinning the pocket on. I have little yellow marks that I am matching my corners up to. I'm doing it for both colors, and we're going to now stitch it on, and then we'll be ready to actually start on putting this thing together. So I'm starting at this stitching line here. You can see that stitching line. Making my ears a little deeper than I wanted. Making my ears a little deeper than I wanted. We have added our interfacing to our facings, and we've put our pocket on. So now the next step is putting the loop on, which I'm not doing, and we're now down to adding the yoke to the back. Now I did a double yoke. You don't have to. If you're doing a regular yoke, you're just going to stitch it on at this seam here. It has notches for you, and then we will do our shoulder seams front to back to do our front to our back at the shoulder seams. I'm going to go ahead and do, I think, the double yoke. So let me get my yoke out and show you how that works. So I have 2 yoke pieces, and I've marked my center back on the bottom part of the yoke, and there's also notches for you to help line it up. And once we get those lined up, we're going to take the other yoke and we're going to do right side yoke to right side front. So I'm going to press it. I'm going to take this over and press this seam and make it nice and smooth. All right, we're over at the cutting table because it's easier to work with this large piece of fabric. I have got my 2 yokes here. Let me show you how the front's currently looking. This would be a perfect time if you want to top stitch. You can come in and top stitch these. I may do it after I get the back yoke on, but you could top stitch the front seam now if you want to. I'm going to take my back and I'm going to pin it to I'm going to pin my right sides together, so just this yoke. So let me get that pinned on and then I'll show you the next step. All right, so I have this layer pinned on. I'm going to flip the other yoke down and I'm going to take this back and I'm going to roll it up. I'm going to roll up all of this excess here and I'll kind of overlap my fronts. And don't worry if it gets a little crumpledy because we can press it out later. And as I roll, my other side of my faced side of my yoke will appear. And we can pull that around. And you can see the whole shirt now is on the inside. And now we're going to take those pins and we're going to repin it with all the layers together. Now, this is the part where, depending on your fabric, you may want to grade this seam. We currently have 3 seams at 5/8 of an inch, so you could come in and trim them down so that the longest one is the outside or the front side, and the shortest one, which will be the facing side. So you could do like 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 5/8, something like that if you want. Okay, we're going to turn this inside out, so I'm going to grab my burrito and gently pull through one corner. And as I do, I'm going to let this flip around. We will have a shirt. Okay, I'm going to let this unroll. So instead of having seams showing, this completely covers it. This is my preferred way of doing a yoke. It's not any slower. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit faster because I don't have to go back and search those seams or do anything else. I'm going to press this, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and do a little top stitching along the yoke just because I think it'll look cute. It also makes it a little sturdier because my husband is hard on his clothes. All right, this is my front shoulder. And I'm going to stitch down using the inside. This is my straight stitch. It is a quilter's foot, 1/4 inch quilter's foot, and I use this inside toe here with this seam to get my nice straight stitch. And away we go. I've already stitched once and back stitched before I turn the camera on. All right, I'm going to do that for all of my yoke seams. So I'm going to do the front shoulder and then the back, and I'll meet you back here for the next step. Back to catch up with our directions. So now we have added our back yoke. They have us now make our collar, but we've already done it. We've also already done our facing. Now they're going to have us attach the collar and facing. But before I do that, since I've done the top stitching here on my yoke, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch my collar. If you look at the directions, they have us do this little notch out and fold up on the interfaced side. Now normally on a collar like this, the interfaced side would be underneath because it is tighter and firmer, and the side that's not interfaced will be loose, so that when you turn, this is my interface side, so that when you turn it over, you're not going to see the wrong side peeking through. You can actually see, can you see my seam allowance right there where it's, or my seam edge? I've got it pressed because this is actually the smaller side. So when I did the red one, which I've completed, I'm getting ready to show you on the turquoise, I flipped it so that the interfacing is on the back and the non-interfacing is going to be the right side. Do the same thing. I'm going to put the interfaced side on the as the undercollar, I'm gonna press this down, and I'm gonna come back and cut my notches on the non-interfaced side. It's best to do it the way they do it, which is stitch on the collar first and then come back and add the facings. You're gonna have less issues between the two. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I'm telling you this so you see the things that I do differently than the directions, which I do a lot. And usually it's just personal experience or personal preference. And sometimes I just don't like the way they do it. But instead of doing understitching, I top stitched my entire collar. And I did that on both of them. They're both top stitched. I don't know if you can even see it on the red, but it is top stitched. So that's how I handled it instead. I like the top stitching. I also top stitched my yoke. The pockets top stitched. So that's how I handled it. All right, so I have my collar pinned on. There are circles and notches and all kinds of things to help us line it up to get it right. It's going to feel too big right along the cut edge, and it is, because there's fit and shaping in the collar. We have a concave neckline. So our neckline, you can see, is smaller at the cut edge than our stitching line. So the thing that has to match up is the actual stitching line. Where we have the cut, we're actually going to make sure that's up and out of the way. We're going to sew our 5/8 across with this up, so we're not catching just this little section. We're going to go all the way across and come back down. So we're catching the front part of our collar, both parts, but in the back, where the facing and the yoke is, we're going to have the collar up. Whoops. Just sewed past where I meant to. Oh good, I didn't. I stopped right in time. Okay, holding that back. So we've got this collar and neckline. I'm not worried about this back piece where it's straight. I'll hold this so it's natural. You can actually see this curve right here. So we need to clip in this curve. Is that another pleat? Nope. And all the way into the front. This is all curvy here, and the collar is flat and it won't lay nice. It won't tuck under. This edge here is smaller than this edge where I'm going to fold it in when it gets caught in the facing, and the whole thing will pucker if we don't come in and clip. All right, we are now ready to come in and add our facing. For our facings, and you can see the perfect edge. I did top stitch them. So they're all self-enclosed and pretty. So that's how the facing looks if you use my trick method. Got my facing pinned on and around. Now I've already clipped this side. You can sew either side. You can sew with this side up and just stitch in your old stitching line if that's easiest for you, or you can sew with this side up. This is the more stable side, but this is, I will just say, the fabric I'm working with is stable. It's kind of stiff. The other thing they have us do that I didn't do, but if you have a softer fabric, they stay stitch these curvy necklines, and that's a good idea because this has got a lot of bias and they'll stretch. So you could do this in the front and the back on the shirt piece. You don't have to worry about it on the facing because the interfacing of the facing will hold it still. But they show stay stitching for the front and the back, and it is, you don't have to back stitch. It's usually like a long stitch, a 4 or something like that. Now when I go to hem, I'm actually going to stitch this facing at the bottom too. It's going to auto turn the hem up for me, and I might go ahead and just do it at this point. I'm going to do, you can do 1 1/4 inches. I think there's 1 1/4 inches included. I'm going to just do it right at the 1 inch. The 1/4 inch won't make a difference. Now it's 5/8 when I turn the corner, so I'm going to sew until I can see this little line. Here's my 5/8, so now I can sink and turn, and you can see it's right on the 5/8 inch line. And I just want to make sure my cut edges stay lined up. Right on the 5/8. Whoop. Checking it out. Okay, we're going to come here and gonna trim out this corner, and I'm actually gonna come kind of deep. Okay, I don't want it to be too thick in that corner. I'm gonna clip the facing. They don't have to be in the same spots as long as they release. Now, I have not clipped down here, and I will. I just want to show you the collar. So there's that pokey part, and you can see how that's pulling around nicely. Now it's going to need a good pressing, and the collar's going to fold over. Now back here, I'm going to serge these edges. I could have serged them before clipping, but I'm actually going to serge them after. Give this a little clip right here, because all of this is going to get tucked up into, okay, I'm going to put all of these little edges up inside here, tuck in the seam allowance, and we're going to finish our collar off. So I am taking all of the seam allowance that is in the back only and pressing it up. Right now I'm just finger pressing so I can show you, but we'll give it an iron at the end. Now, you could machine stitch this down, or you can hand whip it. I'm going to hand whip it first. I may come back and machine stitch it at some point, and I may not. I may just let it be hand whipped. All right, so here's where I serged it, and I actually opened it up as I serged so I don't end up binding it back down where I had clipped. And that is all going to get tucked back inside the facing. I'm going to take the facing, all of this, and I'm just going to, while I'm hand stitching, I'm going to whip the facing down just inside the collar here just to hold it all together. All right, got my needle throat loaded, and I'm going to tuck my my end here that has the knot back here inside where it can't be seen. I'm going to come back and worry about the facing here in a minute. Depending on your stitch length, you can do every stitch or every other stitch, but you want it close. Anyway, you can see that's how it's looking, and it doesn't show at all on the back side because we're not going through to the back side. We're only picking up this thread here. All right, I'm on to the other end. Whoops, keep bumping the camera. I'm to the other end. I'm going to put a knot in it in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and come down and tack down my facings. I'm going to make a knot. It's not going to be visible in that spot. Okay, I'm getting it out where I don't want it. Now I'm going to take my facing and I'm going to whip the facing down to the edge of my yoke in the back. Now remember, I did a faced yoke or an enclosed yoke, so you may just have a seam here, and you could also stitch it down to that seam. And this is going to keep the facing from pulling to the front. And I want to just make sure all my raw edges from whatever the seam allowances from behind are inside this facing, so we don't have any fraying issues when this gets washed. Now if you know that the clothes are going to get a lot of wear and tear, like my husband does, you can put a knot or an extra stitch in there once in a while to make it a little extra secure, and then we'll tie it off at the end. Now if you don't want this many stitches on the inside, you could just stitch it out in this outer corner only. You can also do a running stitch where you kind of go like this between the two, which would make it less visible. I'm really going for security. So now this has not been pressed at all. This is how it looks on the inside, completely enclosed. And this is the right side, and the collar's going to flip around like this. Now again, haven't pressed yet. Need to poke out my collar a little bit right there, but that's how it's going to fold over. Yeah. Before I pin in the sleeves, I'm going to go ahead and press these facings back, and to do that I need to trim out the corner at the bottom of the facing where I stitched at the hemline, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a good trim like this. And now when I turn it, I'll have a much sharper corner, and you can actually fold those little edges in if you need to get your corner nice and pointy. And now it's ready to be pressed, and I have a good corner. We're ready to pin in the sleeve. We want to make sure we do right sides together. Find the front sleeve for the front of the shirt, and if you marked your notches, so you have a single notch for the front, two little cuts for the back, and then there's a shoulder one. So the shoulder one's easy because we have a seam. So we'll pin our shoulders, we'll pin both of our notches, and then we'll pin in between. We have the same issue we did with the collar, where we have the curve of the arm's eye is the opposite of the curve of the sleeve. That's where some of the fit comes in. You also want to make sure you don't get your sleeves backwards, because there is a difference between the front and the back has a little more room for your shoulder because of the way our bodies are structured. So you don't want them backwards. It just won't fit right and won't feel good. When pinning this in, I have the sleeve towards me and the shirt on the other side, and I kind of cup the sleeve up like this, and you can see this wavy edge, and I put my finger close to where I'm going to be stitching, and that helps me pin it accurately and release the fullness that's going to be on the cut edge, and it just goes in a lot easier. And it's also, when I sew it, that's how I'm going to sew it to keep it from moving on me. Yep, I have no buckles anywhere. Okay, I'm going to go over to the serger. I'm going to serge off to a 3/8 inch seam allowance on this, and then I'm going to top stitch down this seam. Just making sure my sleeve doesn't fold over and get near the knife. And that's how it looks. We're going to press the seam towards the sleeve now, and then we'll come over here and top stitch it. Okay, I have pressed the seam allowance of the sleeve towards the sleeve, and you just want to make sure when you're pressing it that you don't get any little buckles or fold overs at your seam. And while I'm here pressing, I'm going to go ahead and press up the first part of my hem. I'm going to stitch up, I'm going to press up just over like 3/8 of an inch, between 1/4 and 3/8. I think we have over an inch again hem here, so I'm going to try and get about 3/8 up, and I'm going to stitch it down to press it and stitch it, top stitch this and do this, and then when we come to sew our side seam it into the sleeve, this hem will be started and it will make a much prettier finished hem when we're done. Alright, so here's my yoke with its top stitching, here's my sleeve with its top stitching, here's my collar with its top stitching. You could also top stitch your facing front if you want to. And then I've also started my hem. Now we're going to do side seams. So we're going to line this up, right sides together, front to back. Line up our underarm seam and line up our little hem down here, and we're going to sew this in one fell swoop. This whole seam, I'm going to do it. Now you could just serge this together, including the sleeve. You could have just serged the sleeve on and just cut off your seam allowance. I'm intentionally sewing this with gray thread, so I wanted to sew my sleeve with the appropriate colored thread at the sewing machine and then come back and serge it. That was just my personal choice. We're clipped together on both sides. Let's go get this sewn up. All right, we're clipped together on both sides. Let's go get this sewn up. Here's our side seam, here's the hem we've started at the sleeve, and here's the hem at the bottom. I went ahead and pressed up my hem because we had stitched our facing. It automatically helps us to turn up that hem, so I've just pressed it all the way around. I've pressed my side seam to the back. Now I'm going to go ahead and press under the raw edge of the hem and clip it or pin it so that I can stitch in the hem. And I'm going to also press up the rest of this hem so we can get stitched around. We have a completely finished blue shirt and red shirt. We're down to our fasteners. We have pattern piece 11 is our buttonhole guide, and if you notice, it's usually it's an odd number of buttonholes, and this one is 5 with one of them way up here in the corner, and of course this folds back. It just looks like 4 buttons because of this one up here, and I am tempted to just do the 4 buttons and skip this top one because he would never button that anyway, and it's always going to be worn like a camp shirt. If anything, I might I'm going to do my Velcro in between where the buttons go and then come back and do snaps. So I might do 5 Velcro and 4 snaps. I am cutting my hook side, which is the scratchier side, and that's going to be on the underneath where the button would be if you're doing buttonholes and buttons. And the reason is this is the side that doesn't come towards your skin. This side of the facing, which would be your buttonhole side, could touch your skin. It's just the way it loops over. So I'm going to put the loops on this side because they're softer. The snaps are going to go in between those. Now it won't be seen on this at all on the right side, but you can see how I'm going to just put my little squares in, and I'm going to sew around each square. On this one, I think I'm only going to sew through the interfacing layer. That's it. We'll go just stitch them in. Just as a heads up, the Velcro tape is quite stiff and it's usually hard on your sewing machine needle, so once you've stitched through this with a sewing machine, it's usually at the end of that needle. All right, I'm going to see if that's enough or if I'm going to have to go across the tops too. All right, the Velcro is in. This is how it looks currently. Now, my original plan was to put the Velcro in and then just do false buttons down the front so it still looked like it buttoned, but he wants real snaps, so we'll do that. But this is how it looks with the Velcro. It's nice and sturdy, and you can't see it at all. Yeah, and I didn't do too big of a Velcro pieces because we are doing the snaps in between, so there'll be snaps down the front too. All right, the snap setter has arrived. This is the one that I had, and the only thing it's good for currently is punching the hole. I use it like an awl to punch the hole. This is a smaller set that came with my snap kit that I practiced with. It works great. It's going to look very similar to this. It is so fumbly for me, so I'm just going to put this big one. So anyway, cap was very easy to get on. Button much harder, very fiddly. I'm not going to show me doing it because it'll be frustrating to everyone. But I'm going to go ahead and set the snaps, and we can finally look at the finished product with both sets of fasteners on it. Okay, a few final thoughts while I'm out here with my husband on the shirts. Okay. When making it, it looked really boxy, and I was afraid it was going to be a little short and a little boxy, but it wasn't. It was actually great. I ended up not doing any alterations for size. I didn't change the sleeve length or anything on it. So overall, I'm really pleased. I definitely will be making this shirt again for him in some other fabrics. One note about the fabric: it is a Waverly interior, so it's a pretty heavy-duty fabric. Wasn't my favorite to sew with for a shirt, but I will tell you it was great for the type of shirt that he wanted, which was kind of a heavy-duty working shirt that will take some wear and tear. And it is not super breathable because it's mostly polyester. It does have a little bit of, my bush is touching, because it's mostly polyester and only a little bit cotton. It's not that breathable, but it is really sturdy. It's also stiff. It hangs nice. It looked good. I kind of wadded them up and brought them down, and they still looked great. Thanks for sewing with me. I'll see you next week for another fun video. If you found this video helpful, informative, or just entertaining, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and maybe giving me a hype.